So, my name is Michael Schroeder. I'm here with a panel of gentlemen from web analytics companies. We have Aaron Fossum, raise your hand. We have Brett Grisdale from Microsoft.
Good morning.
And we have William Garrison from WebTrends.
Good morning.
Today, my name is Michael Schroeder, and I'm a developer evangelist. I'm going to talk to you today about the one truth that you can get from web analytics. And by the end of this session, you're going to believe in web analytics. You're going to believe in it as the way to have your whole team, your whole company aligned behind the goals of your website. To get an understanding of, you know who we are now, who are you guys? Who is a software developer? Okay. Who is a web developer? Good. Who's in marketing? Head of marketing? Just in marketing. Okay, great. Product management. Okay. And management. Who's the management? Great. Good to hear. And who's here from other web analytics companies besides the ones represented here? Got one gentleman here. Who didn't I hit? Who, raise your hand if I didn't mention your role at all. Okay? So that's who we have here. Web analytics is the idea that you want to measure the performance of your website against your business goals. Anything that you do on your website has to be trackable and measurable on the goals of your business. How do you do that? You work with a company like Omniture, WebTrends, Microsoft to measure and track and analyze the performance of your website. These are typically measured in terms of page views, time on site, and these are typically implemented with what we call JavaScript page tags or beacons. It's a little piece of JavaScript code that goes on each website, on each page of that website, and it sort of tracks who came to that website from your demographic, from your IP address, it tracks who came to, how long they spent on that website, what pages they visited. Well, if what you've been seeing the past couple of days about Silverlight, you're noticing that you don't change pages in a Silverlight application. Everything happens, or on a standard Ajax application, everything happens within the context of a single page. How do you measure that? How do you measure engagement with your users? How do you measure that how they're clicking through their website is the way that you want them to click to reach your business goals? So, of those of you who have websites, who here does not have a website at all? Okay. What are some of your business goals for your website? Say it out. What are your business goals? Make money. Okay. What's another business goal of your website? What's that? Self-promotion. What's that?
Hand raisers. Hand raisers, I want more information.
Hand raisers, yes. Communication. Okay. So everything in these business goals, you need to figure out how to measure. Measure make money. Well, how much money comes out of that website? How you look at any e-commerce website, and there's like a funnel. People come in from all different marketing campaigns to that website. They come land on all sorts of pages. You want to direct them down here to that shopping cart, to the buy, to the order is placed, thank you for ordering. They can get lost along that way. They do get lost along that way. And anything that you do to change that website needs to make people get less lost, needs people to understand that where your business goals meet up with what they want. They don't have to understand these are your business goals. Of course, they're going to an Amazon.com or an eBay to buy stuff, to sell stuff, things like that. But everything that you see around these websites, everything is incredibly analyzed on the patterns and behaviors of users. And they analyze this stuff with web analytics. But these techniques have to be modified to work with applications like Silverlight, with applications like Flash, things like Flex, with things like QuickTime, with PDF. They all have to be modified because these are much more interactive mediums. And the way that we have of tracking them is different. So, and also with video, how do you track the way your consumers are engaging with video? How do you know how much they're watching? How do you know what part they like to watch over and over? That's the kind of thing. So, when you integrate Silverlight with web analytics, there's actually a pretty simple way of doing this. And because all of the web analytics vendors have basically standardized upon this idea of JavaScript page tags, you can follow this exact same approach with all of these vendors. So the idea is that you create a concept of a pseudo page view. So a page view traditionally was you reached a page called index.html or default.asp or design.asp or buy.asp or whatever you want, and then that page view is tracked, and then each of the pages or steps along that way is also tracked. And then using the tools that are available on the web interfaces of the analytics services, you would be able to track where people drop off, or if they are following your goals, or if it's a personal website, if they're clicking on the things, if they're clicking on your resume. That would be an example. Or if they're clicking on one sample more than others. You notice that, for example, my job as an evangelist is I build demonstrations of Microsoft technology to encourage people to try out our technology and see what's cool about it. How could I measure that one demo is more effective than another? Well, one way that I could measure, and I'd actually measure this with web analytics, is did seeing the starting page for this application encourage them to install the Silverlight plugin? For me, if I have some demos that encourage people to install Silverlight and some demos that do not, that's a metric that I want to know, because I need to make more of the demos that encourage people to install Silverlight, because that's the metric by which my company and the value of Silverlight is measured in the long run. So the way this happens, the logistics of this, is that you would use JavaScript to track these pseudo page views. You would then call vendor-specific functions. Each vendor has a different way to call their analytics service. And then you're using typically it's a web backend that you and interface that you use to analyze and look at the data. The scope of what we're going to do today is not how to analyze the data, how to determine it. It's just more of a tooling approach, understand what the possibilities are and the things that you might want to measure. So I'm going to deal with four scenarios today. One of them, tracking Silverlight installations. Though Microsoft would love you to blindly put Silverlight on your site, that's saying that we're getting that 1.5 million installs per day, you guys have to make a business decision. When is it appropriate? When does Microsoft when have we built enough adoption that it is a viable thing for you to do? So, definitely not the party line, but it's something that you guys have to make a business decision on. So one of the things that you'll want to track is what version of Silverlight they have installed, and also what if they don't have Silverlight installed. And that's definitely an incredibly valid scenario. So another one is tracking that user interaction. What are they pressing on? Are they pressing on the play, the fast forward? Are they moving the shuttle to a certain part of the media? Are they pressing the buy button? Are they missing the buy button? They're not seeing that. Also tracking media drop-off. So traditionally with progressive download media, it's a fire and forget thing. And so you put your media up on any server in the world, and it's a fire and forget. You know that media file got a hit with your web tracking or with your traditional way of looking at analytics. You don't know if they downloaded 100% of that content and only watched 5% of it. You don't know that. So what I'm going to go into that scenario is how to actually track this media drop-off with Silverlight and with media that's exposed in Silverlight. This goes for both audio and video. And then also, and that what I would call the quality of the content. Now we go to the tracking the media buffering. Who loves media buffering? Good. Your customers hate it too. Media buffering is when your video stops. And that's when they stop watching your content. Or that's when they navigate away from your page and wait for it to buffer and then see it some other time. That's when you lose the attention of your customers. That's what you don't want. So, every time it buffers, you want to know. How much it buffers, you want to know. These are the things that are important to you as the owner of that content. That is quality of experience. So, the first scenario, how to track Silverlight installations. So, as part of the Silverlight SDK, and the scenarios that I'm going to go in right now is all how to do this in Silverlight 1. I'm going to show you very briefly what it would take to do it in Silverlight 2, but all the concepts that I'm going to go over are actually totally valid for Silverlight 2 as well. So, there is a function that comes with the Silverlight JS file, which comes as part of the Silverlight SDK, which if you are going to put Silverlight on your site, you would put this on there. And then you can do a check using this function called Silverlight is installed. And it will check to see what version of Silverlight is installed. And you give it a specific version, so first you check, is at least 2.0 installed? No. Is at least 1.1 installed? No. Is 1.0 installed? Yes. And then that value that Silverlight 1 is installed gives you that number. Gives you that value is tracked. And then if nothing's installed, you also track the value Silverlight not installed. And then if you're a good website designer, you will, of course, give them the badge or say, install Silverlight here. And if they actually go through and install Silverlight, that's another piece of information that the power of your content, the power of your website caused a Silverlight installation. That's something that, of course, Microsoft would love to know. And Microsoft would be very happy to hear that your site is causing Silverlight installations. But that may not be a metric that might be as important to you guys. So the basic idea of this is that you check for the specific version. And once you know that version, you track it back into the create a page view event. The second scenario, how are people using my application? And in this case, can we see in this here? We have I'll be showing you in a couple of moments a demo where I have a page, and that page has a couple buttons on it. And those buttons, when I press them, an event is fired. That event tracks, it does two things. It does business logic, and it also tracks back to the analytics service. And those are tracked to page views. So, for example, you see on here, you see a couple of different events. In here, we're showing the interface for the new Microsoft Analytics package, which is in beta right now. And we're seeing this tracking over time for different events. I'm not about to explain what this really means for your business, but I'm just showing you this type of graph is what you would see from every one of these vendors. It may not look exactly the same way. So the next scenario is tracking media drop-off. So the number of people who are starting to watch a video once they've started it is 100%. The number of people once it gets to the end of that video that are watching it is less than 100%. Maybe certain things happened in that video. Maybe a commercial came up. Maybe a bad joke happened. Maybe something came a little too political for you. As a content owner, you need to know this. You need to know if the content quality is not consistent throughout the media. If the content quality is not consistent to whatever metric the user ascribes to that, whether they don't like it, it's not funny, it's not interesting, too many ads, you want to know when they drop off. So the idea behind this is that Silverlight, Windows Media Format, it supports the idea of media markers. These are invisible data markers that you may have heard about in the past couple days that you can insert into the media itself. You can insert these media markers, actually burn them into the media, or once the Silverlight application loads into, once the media is opened in that Silverlight application, you can programmatically add a marker every 5 seconds. Every time one of these markers hits, an event is triggered. This event triggering calls back to your analytics service. So I just arbitrarily said, I created a tag for every 5 seconds. I named it SAW000, SAW005, SAW00010. That gave me ability to look at a graph that you see here of people seeing at 0 they saw it like this, and as people drop off, as they see that media. What I'm not seeing here, which I think would be an incredibly cool application of Silverlight, is seeing this graph shown over the video, so that you are watching as a post-mortem of this video going on your site. You're seeing that drop-off happen as the events are perspiring, are happening in that video. That would be a really cool Silverlight application, and if you create it, I'm going to promote the hell out of you. And then the last scenario that I'm going to go over is media buffering. So every time the media element in Silverlight changes state, that state can be from play to stop to buffering to opening to close. There's a number of states that you can look at the Silverlight API, and you can put an event handler saying whenever the media state changes, call this event. So I look for this current state changed event, and if the event is buffering, I log that value to my analytics. I could also log, so in what I'm doing is I'm just logging the fact that there was buffering, because I don't know if, and this is just a judgment call on my behalf, I don't know if the length of the buffering or the frequency of the buffering or a combination of that is what would be important for that content. But because you have all this information in front of you, you can see, well, this user had buffering, then they stopped watching. This user had buffering of 1 second, then they stopped watching. This user had buffering of 10 seconds, then they continued watching. So in minutia, this information is hard to decipher, but in aggregate, when you have hundreds or thousands of users and you start putting all this data together, you can start getting a good picture of how people are experiencing your media. Now, here's where I have my evangelist hat on. I believe that analytics can bring you a single truth to your website. Your website has a goal or multiple goals. Go to Microsoft.com. How many goals do you think that has? That is, we want to sell you products, we want to educate you, we want to have a good corporate citizenship. Lots of goals here. Every page, every part of the site has different goals. You figure out what those goals are, and if any change to the website, you figure out what those goals are, you figure out a metric for measuring that, and if any change to the website decreases that metric, makes it, you don't do it. What that means is you have to do something called A/B testing. So A/B testing is when you take your design of your website and you try out different designs under the same time period and see if you get better business results. Who has had in their company multiple heads of marketing come in with a new site design idea? Okay? Somebody comes in marketing, we need a new site design, that's why we're not making enough money, that's why our site isn't performing against our business goals. I think it's because that button isn't big enough. I think it's because our buy button is the wrong color. That's when the designer says, I need to find a new job. It's what analytics gives that web developer. It gives that web developer and the company that single truth. That you put the, okay, Mr. or Miss Marketing, we'll take your design idea, we'll test it against our the design created by the graphic designer, the interaction designer, and we'll see which one performs better against the business goals, which one makes the most money, which one causes the most downloads, which one does the business action that you want to promote on your website. And we'll take that one. No feelings hurt. You have that as an institutional understanding within your company, and you have the ability to have no feelings hurt. Because you know that whatever design ideas you have, whatever design changes you have, the bottom line is if they produce better business results, you take them. If they don't, you don't take them. You make these changes incrementally, and the incremental you make these changes incrementally. You make small changes to the website, you make small changes to the design, and you take the one that performs the best. So how do you do this in Silverlight? So the way that you do it is you try out two similar versions of the same XAML. So as your designer gets a new request, make that button bigger, rearrange them, or do something like that, you don't just make that change and put it up on the website. You put that in the set of possible designs. And you could have a little, either happen both on the server side or the client side, a selection by random for a certain percentage of those users to try out the different design to see if you get better business results. And you take the one that gets the better business results. Because the design that is being used is one of the parameters that goes to the analytics service. These are the parameters that you are following that you can track, that you can then crunch all those numbers to say, that new design, making that button orange, it gave us 1% more revenue. Those are things that you can actually make. That's the way that the web designer can say, the things that I do are directly measurable. It's not just that I make stuff that looks pretty. It's I make stuff that looks pretty, that makes more money than things that don't look pretty, or things that look different. My design sense and my value as a designer is the fact, not that I make them look pretty, but that my designs make more money, or cause more downloads, or get more people to be interested in what I do, or teach people better. Define what the metrics are, figure out what those metrics are for your business, test out different alternatives. Now, I'm going to take you to a little website that I built that demonstrates these pieces. It's xmldocs.net/analytics. And we're going to go on the line. Let's try. Try it one more time. Having a little connection issues. Please pardon my technical difficulties. Let's try it. One more time. Okay. Let's try it here, my local system. I apologize for this. I'm not getting a connection through here. Let me try it on this system over here. We're not getting a connection in here. I apologize for that. Let me try out this system one more time. Okay, we're going to switch over to this. Okay, so you can actually find this site, if I'm pretty sure it's still up, xmldocs.net/analytics. And what we have here is a interface which actually is showing a video coming up here. And the video has these media markers coming up every 5 seconds. You're not seeing anything. The user isn't experiencing anything here. And then there's also some buttons on here. And the buttons allow you to download a white paper that I authored with web trends on Silverlight and web analytics, which actually covers everything that we're talking about here. So you can probably stop taking notes if you're copying furiously. And the options that I'm giving people here is to download it in PDF, download it in XPS, which is a Microsoft PDF-like format, download the source code for what I'm showing here in a zip file, viewing it online as a WPF flow document, and then also another thing to click on to send info and a URL right here. So every interaction the user has with this causes a page view event. So what is happening here, let me just go open up my Visual Studio, is I'm going to go to my default HTML page. It's a very small page here, but close up that, close up that. So I've included two files here. Included two files here and then another file here from the Microsoft Analytics service, which is in beta right now. And two of them are ones that I wrote, which are actually part of the white paper. This Silverlight Analytics file, it's a JavaScript file fully documented on how to do the techniques that I've shown here. And basically, it's when the page loads, body on load, I call a function called track Silverlight version. And what that does is it creates this Silverlight Analytics class. It's a little bit object. It's this file contains this JavaScript class called Silverlight Analytics, and it's just calling some functions on that class to track the version of Silverlight that's installed on the page. That's the first thing. That's that first scenario that I went over. And then the other things that's happening is that when that scene is loaded, I have this is my load function for my Silverlight application. I have my business logic in here. So adding the button handlers, adding the hyperlink handlers, all this stuff. This is all just code that I wrote to handle the business logic of here, which is an incredibly simple Silverlight application. And then I have a function called add analytics. And the add analytics is defined in this analytics function. And here what I do is this Silverlight Analytics class, it takes a parameter. And that parameter is a vendor-specific function that you actually would write. And I have actually examples of what these functions would look like. And it's saying, call this function every time one of these events occurs. So for example, this first one says analytics track element event. The second parameter is source code. The third parameter is mouse left button up. So what that will do is write the Silverlight object model code to whenever the mouse left button up handler happens on the source code button, it tracks an event. Because with Silverlight, you can add multiple event handlers to objects. And I've done it this way because I wanted to separate the analytics code from the business logic. So I'm doing these things, these tracking element events. And then I have another function in here called track media. And the track media does everything from tracking every 5 seconds. So it's track media movie 5. It tracks both the media buffering, and it also tracks the viewing of that and the media drop off. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. And let me just show you what that code looks like in the Silverlight Analytics. So I just put this up with a Creative Commons attribution license, so feel free to use it in anything you built with Silverlight. I've put a lot of the JavaScript commenting in here so that it will pick up in IntelliSense and Visual Studio 2008 so that you can understand how to use this. Like here, for example, is the code that you would do to select the XAML that you would use based upon a random selection. In this case, if we look back to this website, if I refresh this website a couple times, we're going to see slightly different designs. We'll just move the buttons around. I think there are 3 different designs that I tried out here. And these different designs trigger different information to be sent back in. But the only thing I've really changed here is the XAML. I've changed it slightly, which is the recommendation during any A/B testing. Don't change too many parameters. And here I just changed the position of the buttons. I may want to try next changing the order of the buttons or something like that. And of course, this type of code could actually happen on the server side. And in this case, what I'm just doing is here I have an array of scene A, scene B. If I want to try 3 more designs, I'll try scene C, scene D. And all this is really I copy the scene XAML and I make a change to it and I put it there. This is something that would be said to the designer, can you please make this slight alteration to the design? Okay, let's make the alteration, put it in our little testing piece, and we'll test this out. And this just basically says that for a certain percentage of the traffic, let's say 5%, 2%, 1% of the traffic, we're going to try off a different design with them and see if we get better business results. So this is just straight JavaScript here. And then here would be the code, for example, what you would do in checking if a certain version of Silverlight is installed. It's just a simple loop or a simple if statement saying checking is 2 installed, track event SL installed 2. Is 1.1 installed, track this event. And then the track event, this is where it basically would call that vendor-specific function, which I'll show you in one moment. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple different vendors of how simple this track event might be. WebTrends, DCS multitrack. You can actually pass a bunch of more parameters into this to pass in other parameters, other values that are specific to your website. But it basically takes the event name that was passed in from the analytics, from the Silverlight analytics, and it would call this DCS multitrack. With all of the implementations, all the services, this function, the appropriate function or appropriate class is available because you've put that JavaScript on that page. Omnisure Site Catalyst, here's what you'd call. What you would want to do with any JavaScript here is once you get the code right, you'd want to compress it. Because any size, any space, any amount of text takes time to load. So you'd want to compress this data once you compress this code once you get it right. And then Microsoft Ad Center Analytics, this is what you would do. Very simple. Each one of them, I was able to actually put the code each on one slide. So now we have a panel discussion. William Garrison, Senior Professional Services Engineer with WebTrends.
Good morning.
We have Aaron Fossum, Senior Implementation Consultant with Omniture.
Woo.
And we have Brett Grinslade with Principal Group Program Manager, Microsoft Ad Center Analytics. I'd like to each one of you just tell a little bit about your service.
Of course. So WebTrends Analytics, we offer a Microsoft-based solution. There's a SaaS solution for a hosted environment as well as a software, so you can analyze your intranet traffic and so forth. The main purposes of WebTrends Analytics, measuring those campaigns, measuring how the site navigation is performing. And with the Web 2.0 properties and Silverlight integrations, being able to measure that engagement of what's actually occurring within the interactive or within the video. And WebTrends really provides a configurable and custom reporting solution that lets you get to the goals of your business, and all within one single tag.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aaron Foss. I'm an implementation consultant with Omniture. Work very closely with Microsoft. I have a couple questions before I say the thing. How many people are excited about Silverlight and using Silverlight? No, clap. Show it. Show the love. Anybody? Nobody. How many people are excited about web analytics?
We're not doing our job well.
All right. By the end of this time, I hope you will be. Omniture Site Catalyst, similar to WebTrends in that we're a hosted solution, software as a service. As mentioned before, you send information to Site Catalyst using web beacons configured through JavaScript. A few of the things that are unique about what Omniture Site Catalyst offers is event tracking, where you can say not just this is a page view, but this is this kind of event. And when you're tracking video or rich media applications, that's particularly important because not every interaction with a website is a page view event. As well as seeing what the relationship is between video views and user behaviors and actual conversion activity down at the end of the line. So that's a couple of things that we do real well. We have a large install base, and it kind of allows us to see a whole lot of breadth across the industry about what's going on. So that's Omniture.
And the new player.
Yeah. Good morning. So we have a web analytics product that's actually just kind of come out to a new release, a beta refresh. It's an invite-only beta, so if you would like to get on the beta, you can sign up on the web, or you can leave me your card at the end of the day, and we'll make sure we get you an invite code. I guess I have two main points. A lot of the web analytics products are very similar, but my first point really is you need to use web analytics. There's a lot of stuff I hear about talking to customers that implementation's difficult. It's difficult to get tagging done on your site. Those things may be true at some level, but it's really, really critical for you to use analytics. And in this conference, we've seen there are so many great ideas, so many great designs, all this new technology that we can use and get to customers. But that doesn't matter if it doesn't help you achieve your business goals, right? You might be out of business, or your customers might be dissatisfied. And web analytics is really the key to understanding how all your digital assets are interacting with your customers. Like for our product, for example, we have a lot of features to make it really easy to help you tag the site. Those kinds of things to help you get started. Our product's free. There are more sophisticated applications that are worth the money, and there's lots of options. So the first point is really make sure you use web analytics, and the second one is you need to take action. So the other big problem with web analytics is it can kind of become a reporting system. A lot of statistics, a lot of data coming out of these systems, and you really need to be in a mindset to take action. So take an example from our product, which is we have demographic information integrated into the reporting. Well, that could just be a fancy report and you show somebody in marketing, here's what our demographic profile looks like. But if you know your audience is, say, 18 to 25 males, and that's the main audience you have for your site, well, you might get rid of that Martha Stewart-inspired theme and go maybe for Master Chief, right? So you want to have a plan where you and your whole design team understand that web analytics is the way to understand what your audience wants. They're communicating to you every day. And if you don't, put action, if you don't put tags on right now, and if you don't start taking action, you're losing your opportunity to have your customers tell you about your product, and about your service, about your company.
Right. So we're going to just go over one little thing here. Download the white paper. There's 2 locations to download it from, and the white paper will be updated shortly to cover Silverlight 2. And here's all you would do to call from manage code to call one of the JavaScript functions, for example. This would call a function called log event with the pseudo page view being, or the event name being event name. So I have a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask the panel. And I'd love for you, if you want to follow up on a question, or if you want to ask the panel as well, we have a microphone up here. Please make your way to it and ask it. So, gentlemen, I'd like to start off with what are some common metrics for measuring video or RIA interaction?
I'll take some of that. Obviously, video completion rate. If you're delivering video, you want to know how many people start that video versus end that video. Like you mentioned, video drop-off rate. Where in the video do they stop? How many people get to the 50% mark? That kind of thing. And also, probably one of the most important things is what's the relationship between the video watching or viewing the video and a conversion downstream. So a conversion rate that's based on video views. Some things I see.
And also the content that they're seeing. So if they're looking at a video and it refers them to maybe another video that really is the content that they're looking at, being able to attribute that content back to an original video.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that these are the key points. Part of what Michael was saying earlier, you need to understand how that video is used on your site. If you're like the Olympics, the primary goal is to get people to watch the videos and maybe have an advertising experience during that. It could be educational. There are all kinds of different goals you can have. So for video, I think one of the key things is to understand what your goals are. And obviously things like drop-off rate and things that Michael hit on are some of the key things you want to look at.
Okay. How do we track a customer across my different domains?
I can start in that one. This is actually a difficult problem and maybe not something we have a solution for. So for example, in our product, you can put multiple domains into one profile and see your aggregate traffic, but we don't have a good way to track them as they move between domains. A lot of the tracking is done with cookies, and there's issues with tracking people across domains. I think this is a problem in the web analytics space. So
actually, I think this is one thing that WebTrends does extremely well in our first-party cookie technology, in that we're able to set first-party cookies across multiple domains and tie those visitors together. So if you have, let's say you're on Zune.net and you have another domain, ZuneMarketplace.net. With our technology, it allows us to connect the dots between one site and another and see that visitor interaction across. So if you're generating content or you're generating leads to the Zune.net site and you want them to download content on the marketplace site, we're then able to attribute, hey, they came in from this campaign, and then they downloaded the content downstream on the other site.
Omniture also has a similar first-party tagging, cooking that's domain independent, so that you can put the tag on any domain and get reporting smoothly across the domains. In addition, sometimes you want to track a particular domain very specifically because you're looking for very granular usage data, but you also want to roll that up across multiple domains at a higher level. And so with the Site Catalyst technology, not only can you track that smoothly, but you can also isolate your granular detail data into one, we call them report suites, so into one set of reports, and then roll up your aggregate data into another one for more executive level reporting.
Question?
Good morning. The ability to track analytics with video is a nice way to accomplish that, but that's a serial path through the application. As we move more towards forms, RIA-based forms, where you throw down a form to a user and they can navigate through the application however they want, it becomes a lot more complex because they can click wherever they want. And if I'm just on the server side, I can get a line failure. They just go away. I don't know if it crashed, if it succeeded. I don't know what's working or what's not. What kind of suggestions do you have for us as we move more towards a forms-based RIA environment where tracking both is it working and what is working?
Guys?
So I think it's definitely defining the goals. So the goals might be that you want them to come to the site and download a white paper. So if we have those end actions, the KPIs of interest, then we're able to attribute that they've come in, they're working with a given solution, and then in the end, they've converted, they've downloaded a document, or they've filled out a form request so you can gather information. And along the way, if there are errors or issues that occur, pass that information to let us know that, okay, where did the error occur? What problems are we seeing? And so forth.
That's exactly right, and that's a great question. I think we know by this time that web navigation is not linear, it's not serial, and it's not usually attributable to one single thing. So the first important thing, as mentioned, was define the goals that you're trying to measure against, and then associate them with either your media assets or with certain navigation paths through site. And that also involves something that Site Catalyst will offer is what we call a participation metric. So when a success event occurs on your site and you track it, you can attribute that or associate that with all the different forms or all the different interactions the user had with a site previous to that. It kind of takes us out of what's been previously a kind of a trend in the analytics industry to think of things very singularly, and there's always arguments over, well, how do you attribute success to the first interaction or to the last interaction? Just attribute them to both so you understand the associations.
I think another thing you can add to the mix is it depends on what the goal of your interaction is. So maybe it's a form you're trying to get someone to fill out some data that you're going to send back, maybe for lead generation or something. In that case, you're probably trying to optimize around the shortest path, the least number of dropouts. And in that case, you want to understand what path they're taking through the form, which maybe they're getting stuck trying to understand the country drop down and they're trying to get stuck in that space. Something you can do with these rich internet applications is you can send back events as they interact. Another scenario might be social networking or something where your goal is actually more like time spent in an experience. In that case, back to the defining your goals, the specific path they take through may not be of most interest, although you might want to find people that tend to use the setting to change the colors of their site or their experience. Those customers tend to spend a lot more time in this widget or in this area. So this is kind of the kind of things you can start to do once you get your web analytics running and you start to see the patterns and understand what's going to affect your business.
Are you getting the idea that defining your success events is kind of important? Once you do that, everything else falls in place.
And also, you could also think of, because within the huge eventing model of Silverlight, you can track what order people go through that form and see that they do this, and then they always get to this question, and we get a lot of drop-off at this question. Marketing really wanted this question in there, but it turns out that we get a lot of drop-off when they get to that. Maybe it's too personal. Maybe they realize that I don't want to tell them that information. So that's the kind of the pieces, the click stream is so important to understanding, trying to put yourself as if you were standing behind the user, watching them use your application. That's probably the most humbling experience of any software developer or web developer, is watching somebody use your application. Everybody should do it at least once. Yes?
All right. My question's on.
So, just speak up.
All right. My question is more kind of like a challenge. So with Silverlight 2.0, we have managed code on the client. We also have great imperatives, and we can separate the presentation from the code. So which one of you guys is going to be the first person to release derived classes of common controls that have the wiring in already done?
He's really asking about the arm wrestling tournament afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. For web trends, that's something we're looking at right now, making it much simpler to integrate with Silverlight, with other rich internet applications, so that it takes away some of the pain in the coding of the events that might occur.
So I might have a web trends media element that already does the tags for me and sends them back to web trends and tells me where things are dropping off already.
Potentially, yes. You would be able to define an event, and that's something we're looking at the current moment. Right now, with the steps that we've previously defined in the presentation, it's fairly easy to get going with the event handlers and logging the events. So I think right now we're at a very good place. But being able to have that API where you can add an element and go forward would be the ultimate.
A couple of add-on kind of things to that is that inside of Microsoft, we've been thinking about this problem of measurement and quite a bit. And the Silverlight team is also engaging with this to understand how to make their model extensible, make sure they have the right place so that all the analytics vendors can provide the right hooks. And so, I think this is a space that you guys want to stay tuned to. Back to the theme of get on board early and start understanding how your customers use it. I think an issue with a lot of these sort of automatic systems is it depends on what you're really watching for. Obviously, some things like media, and if you bother to put a video up, you want people to watch the whole video. But maybe if they exit in the middle to go do some action, that might be a good thing for your business. And so I think there's a balance we have to have between having a bunch of things automatic and then you thinking through how people are trying to use that specific experience, that specific control. And this is a space that obviously all of us as vendors and Microsoft can use your feedback.
Site Catalyst just released it. With our version 14 that was recently just launched this week, it actually has media tracking built in with your start and stop functions, and it's object oriented. It also operates on the basis of a cookie to kind of make it more economical to send those things. So that's already built in. I will say that if you're heavy duty media, like your bread and butter is heavy duty media, you'll want to use that technology in conjunction with some of the more tracking and not some of the automatic stuff. But yes, this is something that Omniture just announced this week.
Hi, Silverlight and page views. We saw that great demo from Hard Rock Cafe, and if I did something like that to my website, we would see our page views drop tremendously because people would be on one page, zooming in, zooming out, and my boss would be really angry at me for making this kind of change because less page views means it's possible lower Google rank, means possible lower ad income, because we show off, look how many page views we're getting. What's being done to offset that with technologies like Silverlight? So companies like ComScore, when they give the rankings of your company's website, it doesn't say, oh, one view or one page view. It says, well, this person zoomed in 10 times, so that's 10 page views. Or where's the math here? And what are you guys doing to help this?
Let me jump in on that. We're moving for engagement-based sites. There's a lot of discussion around that right now. Eric Peterson's blog, webanalyticsdemystified.com, a few months ago introduced this idea of an engagement metric, which is actually a factor of a bunch of different things. Nielsen, I think it was like Q1 of 07 or early in 07, announced that they're moving away from page-based tracking more toward reporting time on site. So there's actually an industry shift. And I think your vendor solution is going to be it's going to be vendor agnostic. Because again, it gets back to what is it you're going to measure? How do you define success? As we move toward RIA, we're moving away from page-based or page view-based measurement, which is kind of the old tried and true standby. A lot of people are saying page view is dead, page view is dead, and more towards time on site. I'll add the following caveat to that. Be sure that you remember that you keep in mind, you don't get so caught up in the conversation about the cool metric du jour, if you will. You focus on what your site is there to do and measure based on that instead of getting so much caught up into like the whatever. I mean, I know there's competitive analysis. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're a media-based site, the value of the ad impression, obviously that's where you make your money. So you measure ad impressions.
How come all the screenshots then showed page views and not engagement? Are UIs going to change to show engagement numbers instead of page view numbers?
So the WebTrends user interface is completely customizable in that aspect. So if it is an engagement metric such as plays and stops or maybe navigation clicks, then those fields, instead of displaying page views, display those engagement metrics.
Yeah, I think some of it, as you kind of hit on when you came in, is that there's also, this is an area that the whole industry is trying to understand, and we don't really have a very common understanding of what engagement really means. There's a lot of debate and controversy. Like on our side, Microsoft's side, on the advertising front, there's a lot of discussion about attribution of conversions and what does the last click always win? Does that make sense? And so this is it's actually a pretty dynamic area of the industry right now. And the demo you saw from our product is pretty much presented on the basis of kind of how people have thought about it in the past. And internally, to kind of open the kimono a little bit, this is a big discussion with a lot of the portal teams at Microsoft, because right now all of our business metrics are defined around, we think of audience in terms of page views and unique users. That's kind of a key metric of how we understand people within the businesses. And we're evolving, and part of the talk here is to help you guys push your business faster. How do you evolve what your business team thinks about how your company is successful? One of the things also I should mention is that I think a piece that hasn't changed much, even with all this activity, is sort of the concept of a conversion. If you can understand what's an important action for your customers, for an e-commerce site, buying stuff's a pretty straightforward conversion, right? For other kinds of sites, it might be registering and getting a user account. And if you understand conversions, that's one metric I think that's not really moving around that much. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that, but.
Yeah, I would agree. That's conversion, and it may be using the navigation, using a video of some sort. One of the products we offer is Score, so we can score a visitor. Are they doing these activities that we want them to do, and attributing a specific number value to what that visitor is doing compared to other visitors that come through the pipe?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Isn't that really because conversion is a business definition, a business goal of your site?
Yeah.
Right? So as
Right.
that business goal changes, it's just a technical way to measure that business goal.
Yeah, so
So that's
Let's
why
repeat
that's
the question.
always going to be the primary measure of your site, not page views, or not necessarily interaction, unless those are the objective, those are the conversions that you want to measure.
So the gentleman asked, just repeating for the camera, the gentleman asked about, I mean, if conversion is the goal of the site, that's what we want to measure, right? So, I mean, gentlemen?
How do you make money? How do you reduce support costs by disseminating information? How do you generate leads for more business, the hand raisers? How do you get at those people? How do you make money? How do you achieve your business goals? Measure it. Every single one of the products up here will do that for you.
And your point is valid, right? The difference between conversion and some just raw number like page views is that you've taken a little bit of time to decide what is my site about. And taking that time, I am advocating you jump right in and get started, but you also want to, for most of these products, there's usually a separate step you take to say, this is a particular event I want to track in some more detail. And like for e-commerce, usually you have like a conversion related to a purchase or a shopping cart. But there's a lot of different kinds of conversions as you're alluding to, and so it's important to think through.
And given that we're 99% developers in this room, I think it's kind of a good thing to kind of point out. This is a time when you kind of get to take a little bit of the code hat off a little bit and think a little bit like the business, even if that means pushing back to say, how have you defined success? Have you guys thought about it? I mean, be the smart guy in the room and come up with that question that nobody expects the dev to ask. Instead of, where's the functional spec? Say, have you thought about how you define success? So that's a cool thing about analytics as an industry right now is because since we're emerging, it really presents opportunities for people. And the thing that gets me really excited about it is the opportunity to sit, one hand on the dev side. I, refer to myself as a geek, and one hand on the business side. And so, you're coding one day and you're talking to an exec the next. It's really awesome part of the analytics thing.
You want to add on that, or
No, that's
questions?
everything was great.
Okay. So one of the things that we are seeing is some people are actually blocking the page tags. What's the impact of that on the analytics business?
So I'll answer that. And from all of the reporting that we've seen, it's actually very, very small. And it even gets smaller as we move into RIA apps because a lot of them are JavaScript based. Using Ajax, Silverlight, we still need JavaScript enabled. So therefore, when we hit those points, we're actually able to track those more effectively than in the past. In the past, there has been some talks about deletion rates of cookies and so forth and the accuracy of that. And with RIA apps, we still have the cookie information. We're able to attribute all of that. So I believe the deletion of the beacons or the blocking of the beacons has really been minimized in recent times.
You guys seeing the same thing?
The only other comment I'd add is I think it's probably the wrong way to think of web analytics as a precision instrument that you're using to measure very, very detailed things. But the goal of web analytics in the long run is for you to understand the trends and for you to take action against those trends to make your products or your site more engaging, more valuable to your customers. So you might be getting deletions, there might be some problems. I agree that RIA is starting to mitigate that to some extent. But to a large extent, your trends are still going to be valid. Even if one package gives you a certain number here, another package gives you a different number, you get a bunch of blocking, you're still going to be able to act on trends. So think of web analytics as a way to understand how people behave and what the trends are on your site.
And you can further mitigate the impact of that on your analysis by doing ratio-based key performance indicators, which will adjust out some of those flaws and absolutes.
Okay. Another question here. So I showed a technique of putting a page tag event handler every 5 seconds in a video. Are there any added costs for that could amass a huge amount of data. I mean, I could actually put an event handler for every second if I wanted to. Is there any cost to doing that kind of type thing from a financial cost?
We know your answer.
I could jump in easily to start with. We have a free product, so that's a pretty straightforward answer. Having said that, there are some costs to your customers, so you should think about you will have more traffic. Most of these calls will be asynchronous, so it's not going to impact the user interface experience for the customer, but you could get kind of chatty. So, and you'll have a lot of the other costs is you'll have a lot of data on the other side that you may or may not be able to act on. So, you want to be a little bit judicious on how you serve them out.
Right. From the WebTrends side, since we have two models here, we have the software as a service, and we also have the software itself for internal sites. We have two cost models. One is, on the software side, collect all the data you want. So you can collect all of these events maybe every second. That's way too much data to consume, though, to begin with. I would highly not do that. But there's also the analysis part of it. So analyzing that amount of data, and that's where our costs will come in. So if we're analyzing an event that occurs every single second, then that cost is going to play in. But overall, the way that we build our model, it doesn't have too much of an effect with RIA.
Omniture, is based on a cost per, you pay for the traffic that you send to us. So there can be some cost to it. However, with our version 14 media tracking, instead of continually communicating with the server, it will write some of that interim information to a cookie. And then on an event that either you trigger or will automatically be triggered for you, depending on how you configure, it'll actually send that traffic all in one nice, neat packet. And so you kind of conserve both on bandwidth and on monetary costs there.
And we have another analytics provider, which actually we don't have in the panel here. They also provide a free analytics service. I think they have a search engine too. This technique is perfectly valid. All the techniques we showed in the presentation and the white paper are actually perfectly valid with that search engine vendor. So how do we integrate into advertising or decision support or CRM systems? How do we integrate, now that we are collecting this data, how do we push it back into the engine of the company or the website or the systems?
I can jump in to start a little bit. We're a relatively new product, so we don't actually have a lot of dials and knobs. We're still in this sort of data feedback mode and getting information from customers. The one place we are doing a lot of investment is in the connection with advertising systems. Obviously, Microsoft has a big investment in advertising platforms, and we also recognize there are some big search engine providers that you might also need data from, so that's something that we account for. So I think we're mostly focused on the advertising, how you get money type of side of the problem, and most of our campaign reporting and analytics in that space are going to be derived out of the Microsoft marketing platform, and then ability to import from other vendors. Ability to do things like integrating into your maybe ERP systems or CRM is not something that you can really do with our product at the moment.
So with WebTrends product, we offer the ability to bring in your demand channels and your generation for your campaigns, so that within the WebTrends UI you can see how a specific creative is performing compared to another, on one network compared to another. But what we also offer is the ability to use web services or ODBC connection to pull the data out of the WebTrends UI and put it into your internal systems and join it with maybe offline data that you may have, so that you can make those correlations on how a marketing campaign is performing online and offline.
It's all about integration. We understand that your website may be the most important part of your business if you're a .com, but it is only one part of your business. You have a number of vendors, advertising providers, CRM systems. So you can integrate pretty much any piece of data in or out of data with Site Catalyst. It's quite robust in that. In addition, we have something called Genesis, which is literally your business users can do it without any dev resource. Just simply drag. It's like a little puzzle. You say, I have Salesforce, which is one of our partners for the CRM world, and say, I have a Salesforce account. Drag it over and drop it, and all of a sudden, you put in your username, password stuff. You're integrated. Done.
Okay. Another question. So are there considerations if I host my Silverlight application separately from my main site, either on a content delivery network or on another site? With tracking?
So I would say yes, there are some considerations to take in there. Depending on how you want to view the data. This Silverlight application may be large enough that it needs to be monitored on its own. There may be key aspects or events, engagement events, or time within the video that you need to see at a roll-up level. So from the technical side, there are a few things that need to be done to make sure that you have that integration and the data is able to join. And dependent upon what site it might live on, and is it an actual application, is it a website, and so forth. So it's important to make sure you do these checks, make sure you understand what are the goals of the application, what are the goals of the website, are they joined together, am I leading people from the website to convert within the Silverlight application, and if so, I need to make sure along the way that everything is joined correctly.
I view the question as slightly different than the cross-domain tracking, which is kind of a business thing. This is a little bit more technical. I have this app, and I'm going to be hosting it through my design agency or something like that. It's not going to be hosted on my servers. The site catalyst tag, I'll use that as an example, involves the actual page tag, similar to what you saw up on screen, and also a small JavaScript include file. It's kind of important that JavaScript include file, basically all the assets you need to do your tracking, are hosted on the same server, primarily to avoid JavaScript cross-domain issues. So, be aware that there are considerations.
I don't think I have much more to add on that.
Okay, great. And demographic data, the accuracy of the demographic data that's being reported in your systems on your console. How can you guys comment on that?
I can start with the stuff that we provide in our product. It's derived out of information that we have on the kind of the back end side for Windows Live ID, and we have a process of making all that information anonymous and then kind of presenting it to you so you can understand how your traffic represents. It's pretty accurate. We've done quite a bit of analysis of the sort of first wave of customers that we've had, and we have quite a bit of confidence in it. Right now, the percentage sort of sampling population is maybe on the order of the 20-30% range for most of the sites we've been looking at. So it does sort of give you a margin of error in there.
And I would agree. We also offer a product for geolocation lookup that's based off of Akamai's EdgeScape database. So that has MSA, DMA, and so forth data based on IP address. So we can look up the given user against this database and then attribute to where their location is in the world or what part of DMA they belong to. I would say there's some locations such as AOL, how they proxy their data, everything gets shipped through there. So if you're looking in a report and you see, my Virginia traffic is very, very high, I may not want to send a mailing to Virginia or so forth. So there is a little bit of inaccuracy, but overall, the trend is we see it's constantly updated, and we're able to get fairly accurate data.
Again, it's all about integration. So if you have that demographic data either through lead gen or newsletter registration or purchase events, you have that demographic data, age range, gender, that kind of stuff. Absolutely integrate it for the purpose of segmenting, so your most effective demographics and how your marketing is working toward them. Do be careful. There are some PII issues, but there are very personally identifiable information issues. So do be aware and sensitive. I don't know about WebTrends, but Omniture doesn't really want to see email addresses or anything that's hardcore personally identifiable. Instead, we prefer to see anonymous IDs that you can tie back into your systems for remarketing, and we're actually really good at integrating that way. So again, all about integration. Look out for PII.
Well, those are the questions that I had prepared. Anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask the panel or us?
Are you excited yet? Anybody?
Yes, come on up.
So, thanks to Michael, I now understand that we can track video traffic, but I'm not yet sure how I can use that for I can really understand that, I can really measure that, because there's a difference between tracking and measuring, or in other words, how I can present that data to myself or to my management. Okay. Or can you give me your pitch from each of you?
Sure. I would say video tracking in general, if you may have categorized content, so these are developer videos or these are marketing videos and so forth, and breaking it down to those categories and saying, we're spending all of this time creating these videos marketing videos when the visitors to our site are using the developer-based videos. So being able to look at it at different segments of the visitor type and how their interactions may occur. We may also see, even though the marketing videos are not being used as much, they're watched from start to complete. So we're able to see that, hey, people are actually engaged within these interactives too.
As I said earlier, I think that the way to present this information, the right way to present this information, is show the video playing with that graph of drop-off, so that you can have an immediate correlation. Nobody has a tool like this as far as I know yet. But I could see, I think in my head of, okay, I grab the data for ODBC, or I grab the data from the system and present it in the web console of showing that video, and showing this in front of the business decision makers who are saying, is this video good? Well, we see here, and then we put that ad, that specific ad in there. You watch the ad, and then you see the drop off like that. That is, the picture tells the story there. And seeing a graph on one page and seeing the video on another page, a graph with times, and it doesn't make sense until you see them together. And I think that's going to be the real key. And whichever vendor comes out with one of those first, I think it will have a real market lead.
That's a really good point. One of the other things we announced with Site Catalyst version 14 is an API where you can reach in and grab that data and integrate it with widgets and stuff like that. So actually it'd be rather easy to do. It's not cut and paste code easy, but it'd be rather straightforward.
And one other kind of comment there is that I think it depends on what you're trying to understand about how you use video on your site, the purpose of your site. And for example, like right now there's a lot of pre-roll advertising on videos. You might want to understand how, what's the trade-off between having pre-rolls and the revenue that we generate versus getting rid of the pre-roll, maybe having some other type of more subtle advertising, and how does that correlate to the revenue you make? So that's kind of a yield-driven decision-making process, and you'd want to present it in that case, in that kind of context. I think the other way to think about it is really, beyond just something like maybe revenue or something like that, is back to the sort of point that Michael was making earlier, is testing. So you can have two different videos maybe on the same topic. It's worth your time as developers to engineer your system so it's easy for you to try out different videos for the same type of experience and see what the results are. If your goal is to watch the whole video and then click the sign up button at the end or something, then you want to be able to test the different experiences. So don't think of video just as something you throw up on the site and then you go build the rest of it. Video is part of the experience, just like a lot of these, the Hard Rock, for example, their experience. What are they trying to accomplish and what's the outcome? And do they have a way to sort of test out different ways to approach it? So, testing, I think Eric Peterson has a quote or something that says, essentially, there is no analytics without testing. Mm-hmm. And it really is true. If you don't have a way to evaluate different ways to approach your customers, you don't really have anything to present people in terms of management. You can create any beautiful report you want, but unless you can sort of quantify what that means to your business, you don't necessarily have the data people need to make decisions.
And we're moving a little bit beyond that pure A/B test into more of a multivariate world where not only are you testing two different versions of your assets, you're also targeting those to particular demographics, so back to that demographic integration. So as you're doing that kind of optimization, you really want to both test and target the audience.
Yeah, and
match the right creative with the right people.
Yeah. Yes.
You had mentioned earlier about some of the new ways of measuring some of the new metrics with RIA, and currently we have click-throughs, page views, impressions, and that's pretty standard. Do you see kind of a new standard type emerging where it becomes kind of a norm where everyone kind of measures by? You mentioned something about the amount of time that a person interacts. Is there something that's very simple that I think most advertisers are going to be paying for? Because in terms of like an average amount of time someone spends on a rich media application, besides maybe brand exposure, there's it's a lot more difficult to measure ROI. Whereas a click through and then they purchase product, there's a clear ROI with that. So I don't know if you can. Yeah,
I have two different things I can kind of say about that. One is, I think, back to a point that Aaron was making, is that you want to segment folks. So a useful thing to understand would be things like people who watch videos on my site also have these other activities. And so you can kind of start to make understand what the correlations are. So there's lots of things you can do within the context of your own experience, and you're the experts to understand what that means, and you have to kind of ferret through those. Kind of a little bit on the advertising side, I think there is a lot of work starting to go on around what this means and how all these different types of experiences relate to advertising systems. An asset Microsoft has right now is we have a gaming advertising platform called Massive, and they've actually done a pretty good job of defining the sort of standard industry norms around things like what does it mean to get an impression through a game experience. And that same kind of innovation and leadership is the kind of thing I think we'll see in the industry, but as far as I know right now, there's not a lot of really good standards yet in this space.
The best resource that I went to learn about analytics, a person and a site. Eric Peterson, who they mentioned, he has a book and a site called Web Analytics Demystified. He is the god of analytics. If you are interested at all, go to his site and take a look at Web Analytics Demystified.
It's a book.
And a book.
It's a bestseller.
For me, it is.
You could be mad if I mention Avinash.
No,
he's my favorite
absolutely.
blog. Occam's Razor, Avinash Kaushik, and I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but he's got a phenomenal blog. Yeah.
Yeah, Occam's Razor is a great resource. Actually, once you get started, kind of back to the point, I think, what we'd like all you folks to go home with is go home and decide, worst case, I'm going to do free. Best case, I'm going to go find a great solution. But get something running, get that feedback from your customers, and then start reading these blogs and understanding different ways to measure folks. Because the way I look at it is every day that you have people come into your sites and you don't understand what they're doing is a day you've lost intelligence about how your audience thinks about you as a company. And the clock is ticking. A lot of your competitors are already using this data. These guys have a very healthy business because lots of people are getting this information. And you need to be in that same boat, and then you can take it to the next level with these rich internet applications and video. And
it's not rocket science. I mean, the code implementation is pretty easy, and yeah, there's a whole lot of standards debate because it's a burgeoning, exploding industry. Job growth in this industry is exploding, as are salaries. But it's easy to implement, and we get all kind of wrapped around talking about standards and metrics and all this kind of thing. It sounds quite advanced, especially when we talk about algorithms and stuff. It's simple. How do you make money? Measure it. That's your foundation. Build from there.
I completely agree with that. And the big takeaway for me, for you guys, is it doesn't matter if it's simple to implement. In most cases, Omniture, Microsoft Ad Center, so forth. Simple to implement. It's defining those goals, building out your goals. What are you trying to do? Attributing that, and the rest is sort of history.
I put up a page from the white paper with a bunch of links that you might want to grab. They're in the white paper, so you don't have to copy them down here. Of course, it links to Eric Peterson's Web Analytics Demystified. Actually, I'm showing an older version of the white paper. Newer version, March 2008, this month, and they'll be updated with for Silverlight 2 shortly. So, thank you so much for everybody coming. Thank you,
Are you
panel.
excited yet? Anyway, throw me a bone.
Great.